Hello and welcome back to another episode of the AGRIMINDS podcast. I'm Kacee Bohle, and today I am so excited to bring on Natalie McFarland. If you guys remember a couple episodes back, I had Scout Foster. We talked all things burnout, and Scout actually works for McFarland Productions. And so I thought, you know what? I want to bring Natalie in here and just kind of talk about the leadership perspective and how she has fostered this environment, this culture where people can talk about some of these topics that are a little bit taboo. So, Natalie, welcome to the AgriMinds podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, I am so excited. So, I gave a little bit of a spoiler as to who you are, but if people don't know who you are, tell us about who you are, what you guys do. Don't hold back.
Sure. So I'm Natalie McFarland. I'm the founder and president of McFarland Productions, and then our sub brand, which is a film arm, is Off Your Rocker Films. I guess I really kind of started doing this as a freelancer in 2008 ish, and I kind of freelanced my way through college. Put myself through college that way, tried to keep those student loans down, but didn't really take it seriously until I met another creative who was doing it full time. If you would have told 16, 17, 18, 19, or 20-year-old me that I would be doing what I'm doing now as an actual job, I would say that's not a job. So it took me a while to realize that it could be a thing. So 2014, I officially filed for the LLC. And then since then, we've been growing. So there's, I guess, 5 of us full time on staff. And then we've got about a dozen contractors that we work with on a really regular basis, depending on the project. So we're a marketing and creative agency. We focus exclusively on Western agriculture and outdoor. So we stay outside as much as possible, despite our jobs requiring us to be at a computer quite often. At least we get the break to go outside and get to support the industries that we really love most.
Wow, that is super interesting. Here's a question. And as y'all know, I don't script this stuff. I just think of it as we talk. But how did you know how to do this stuff? I mean, I remember when I was working full time and I was getting ready to become an entrepreneur, start my own business. There was so much that I had to research and just figure out trial by error. And from what I'm hearing you say is like you haven't really gotten the experience working for corporate much, right? Like you probably had a job or
No,
some jobs, but it sounds like you went from college
sure.
to entrepreneurship. And how did you learn to create such a unique culture? Or is this just something that comes naturally to you?
So yeah, I did work for other places. Through college, I worked at several different veterinary clinics, one here in Roseburg, and then I actually worked at the veterinary teaching hospital at Oregon State University. I also worked. Kevin graduated the year after me, so I worked at a separate clinic called Eastgate Veterinary Clinic outside of Corvallis while he was finishing his degree. And then to get home, because we both wanted to get back to the Roseburg area, I responded to the sketchiest Craigslist ad because Craigslist was still a thing at the time, right? The sketchiest Craigslist ad that said like office administrative position apply and an email. And that's all it was. It was like one sentence. So I applied to this thing, right? All I know is that it's in Roseburg somewhere. Turns out it was Romtech Utilities, which was one of the best companies I could ever ask for to have worked for. And I worked for them from 2013 to basically 2018. But in that time period, my boss at the time became a mentor for me. Actually helped me in a lot of the initial sort of business model things, like how to make the contracts work and things like that for McFarland Productions. So my boss knew that someday I was going to be leaving, but also helped me work myself out of a job, which was quite unique. There's very few bosses that would do that for somebody. But I, got more and more and more part time until 2018 in January when I finally was like, I am on the road and gone more than I am here in the office. And at this point in time, I've waited too long. I've held myself back too long. It's time to go. So hired my first employee before I left my job. So we actually started our team before I was even gone out of a 9 to 5, right? So certainly did that, but I think as far as, like, learning to do the business or learning the how-tos of the various things that we do or whatever, I really am a firm believer that everything is figure outable, right? And honestly, it's a huge, huge, huge skill set that I look for when I'm hiring someone. If you are not a person who doesn't approach life that everything is figure outable, like, I want you to be slightly delusional that you could actually achieve anything and it's just a matter of figuring it out. So, like, if you're delusional like me, it's probably gonna work out on the team, but, I think the everything is figure outable mentality. I had a boss once say that, I had there's 3 things that, create a successful person, and it's attitude, and it's an "I'll show you" attitude when somebody tells you that you can't, because 'cause you're gonna get that a lot in business, whether you work for someone else or you work for yourself. A fear of failure, and most people are like, "Don't be afraid of failure, it happens to everybody." No, I think failure drives you to be better. It also you if you're afraid of it, maybe you'll run from it, right? So you're gonna work harder not to fail. And absolute blind ambition, just belief that it can happen if you just work hard enough. So those 3 things are something that boss said that he saw in me as a very young person, coming straight out of college, and probably some of the words that have kind of fueled me, throughout my 20s and now 30s. And I just think that, as a business owner, when you're growing teams, when you're figuring out how to make contracts work and, at first you're wearing all the hats, and then you gotta figure out how to delegate some of the hats. All of that is a learning curve, and if you ever approach business like you've learned it all, that's the day you should shut your business down, because there's no way for you to know it all. There's gonna be new situations every single year, new challenges, and additional people create more complexity. So, sometimes I think about the way we started the business, and I was like, "Man, it was just so simple," I just, like, told them what I was gonna do, I did the thing, I got paid for the thing, and that was the end of it, right? Like, but it's much more complicated now.
Yeah, I feel like I had to learn the hard way a lot of the times when it came to like leadership and personal and professional development. It usually took me going through something unpleasant to say, okay, I'm not going to do that again, or here's what I want to do differently moving forward. And I've also spent a lot of money on different courses and programs that I've gone through that have taught me about culture, emotional awareness, leadership development, how to work with people. Have you gone through anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're gonna be a business owner, you better at least like audiobooks or be a reader, right? There's no better way I think than being able to read just business book after business book. I am a total audiobook nerd. So, like, if I'm on the road, which I spend a lot of hours doing that, from point A to point B is usually a book. And so I spend a lot of time listening to books. I also have some really great mentors in my life, that have been past bosses or other leaders in the industry, that you learn a lot from just by observation. I think by being curious, by trying to understand other leaders, that's a huge piece of learning to be a better leader yourself. And I also worked for one other company for exactly 1 year, which I will not name that company, but they taught me what not to do in nearly every facet of business. Um, it was a horrific, terrible experience with some of the worst company culture you can imagine. Um, and I actually got asked, the day that I quit, the boss said, "Are you an idiot?" And I said, "I would be an idiot if I stayed here 1 more minute." So, yeah, I've been in bad ones, and I've been in great ones,
Yeah.
and I'm a person of integrity, and when I enter a situation where Seems no one has that. It's time for me to exit stage left, so I won't name that company, but, yeah, that was I think I've learned a lot from bad experiences and from good experiences, that have really developed, my own leadership skills, and I won't say, like, developed me into the leader that I am today because I feel like we're always constantly working on that, so, um, anyway, yeah, I think it's a lot of life experience, I think it's books. I'm not really a courses person. I've kind of found that, like, buying courses it's a little too repetitive, or, like, I seem to have a hard time finding the course at the level that makes sense for me, right? Like, I usually go in there, I'm like, "Okay, fast forward for this one. Okay, that one. Maybe not this one," right? So books tend to keep me a little bit more active. I really love, audiobooks where founders are talking about their development, right? So, like, Shoe Dog is a really good one. That's Nike's, Phil Knight, Nike. And so he talks about the original development of the company. I really love Creativity Inc. And I think it's Ed Camtrell, I believe is his last name. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he was Pixar, the development of Pixar. Quite frankly, my favorite book of all time is Creativity Inc. I really love Unreasonable Hospitality. That's trying to think of the name of the restaurant that it's about, but that is an incredible book too. You can learn tons and tons, both from external hospitality. This was about a very high end restaurant in New York City. External hospitality as well as internal hospitality, and keeping teams happy and growth that way. Know What You For is a really good one too.
Oh, I love those book recommendations, and I'm a big audiobook person too. And I was actually interviewed on a podcast a while back, and they're like, "What books are you reading these days?" And I was like, "I wish I had time to read books, like, because I love to
Yeah.
underline and highlight and write in the margins." But audiobooks just fit in this season of my life, whether I'm on the road or in the kitchen doing something or out for a walk, like, audiobooks just make sense for me. So thank you for those
Mhm.
recommendations. Um, you were talking about like toxic leadership and learning what not to do. And I think we've all been there. And I think that it's necessary, right? Because if
Mhm.
you don't know what bad leadership looks like, you don't know what good leadership looks like and vice versa. And so I think it's important to experience them, but not always stay there, right? Like it doesn't make sense for you to
Right.
always stay there. And knowing what that breaking point is and saying, okay, this is not worth sticking around and enduring anymore. That's the key there. And I've had that same thing where I actually had a box packed under my desk because I was just like, I know I'm going to get fired at one point or I'm going to get up and walk out and I don't know which one's coming first. I was so ready to leave. And the day that I was actually going to turn in my notice, I ended up getting fired and it worked out well for me. I couldn't stay there any longer and that was one of my earlier jobs and it helped me realize like I don't wanna be anything like that person. That was the most miserable experience. Here's everything I don't ever want to be known for. Here's what I never want my team to feel like, whether it is somebody I'm managing, somebody I'm working alongside, a client, or even my family, right? Like, I just don't wanna be that kind of
Mhm.
human. And I feel like leadership can
Mhm.
show up at home and at work, and it's a you thing, right? Like, I feel like it's really hard to be like, "Here's how I am at work, and here's how I am at home." Like, I feel like there is an overlap. Now, obviously, you can kind of lean heavier on one side than the other, but I feel like it's human development at that point. And so I think
Mhm.
it speaks volumes about what kind of person you are based off of what we know about how you show up at work. So, Natalie, can you shine a little bit of light on what the culture looks like there? I know we talked about it a little bit in Scout's episode, but I would love to hear from your perspective why those types of things are important for you as a business owner, as a leader, and how you kind of decide what's important and what's not important.
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the first things you need to know about McFarland Productions is that we're a fully remote company. That's a really hard concept for a lot of business owners to fully understand, is to have employees in multiple places in Oregon, Texas, Arkansas, Connecticut, contractors in Florida, Wyoming. Um, we've got all of these people all over the place. That means 3 different time zones. That means, sometimes 4 different time zones if I'm on the road. That means technological challenges, right? Like how do we get in alignment with all of the stuff that we need to be able to do the work? How do we manage each other or manage our time? How do we manage our tasks, and how do we make sure things get done on time? How do we manage client relationships through that? And quite frankly, when you're scheduling a meeting, how do you figure out how to fit into everybody's time zone, right? Those are challenges for sure, being a fully remote company. But I had decided that a fully remote company was going to be something that was necessary, at least 90% of the way. Pretty much when I hired my first employee, she did work in the office part time, but then she worked out of the office the other part of the time. The reality is that I don't spend this much time on the road anymore, but our primary camera operators are on the road. My highest year was 86% of the year. The reality is that it was going to be remote whether I liked it or not, right? Because I was going to be gone. So that remote culture, right, can be very difficult, and it's not for everyone, right? So hiring people who are ready for that kind of remote culture, who are interested in that kind of remote culture, that's rule number 1. Don't hire somebody who's gonna be set up to fail in a remote situation. It's really not for everyone. And I see on LinkedIn all the time people complaining, "Oh, these return to office policies are, BS or whatever." And people go on like giant rants about how return to office is just narcissistic look for control, right? But as a person who has developed a fully remote company and has worked on this thing for, 18 years, dang near now, since the time I started freelancing, remote is not for everyone. And just because your company has remote as an option does not mean that you should be a remote employee. Some people are more successful face to face, and that's okay. Some companies are more successful face to face, and that's okay. Um, I also don't think you can have every single position remote, right? Like editors, we've finally kind of figured this out. So this is kind of a technical thing that we figured out, but Synology is it's like a mini server, right? I have one that exists at my house. We have an editor who have ones that exists at his house. They sync via the internet. Um, and it turns out video files are really large, right? So it takes a very long time for us to upload a project here and it to be copied to his Synology overnight. But the only way that we've been able to figure out to have a remote employee be an editor work is if we've got this auto syncing thing, right? That's just one example of like a technical thing that we've done that has created an environment where we can make that work. Getting kind of off, sort of the technical piece, remote work is a challenge in that you're not going to see each other every day. You don't, overhear conversations, and you're not like sitting in a meeting, or you're not sitting like within the earshot of a meeting, or hearing the sales guy on a call, or whatever, to just kind of accidentally absorb information by osmosis, right? I was a lead project manager for many years at Romtech Utilities. And one of my favorite things we did actually there was when we cut a giant hole in the wall between my office and the sales office, because I already knew what the projects were before they made it to me, just because I could hear them talking, right? So I already had all this background information that I accidentally gained by being in proximity. That doesn't happen in remote work, right? So you have to be interested in being connected to the other employees and team members around you. Otherwise, if you are not playing an active role in that, you're going to miss 90% of the information because you're not physically in the same room. That's a really hard thing for people to kind of understand and figure out how to develop. Um, I think one of the worst things that can happen in companies, and one of the things I learned not to do at the company that I mentioned before, was don't allow people, especially individuals, but even departments, to become siloed, because that's the minute that they're going to blame everybody else for the problems, and no one understands what the other person does or what their challenges are. So they have, number one, zero empathy for the other person. But number two, they don't really understand it. So they have no workflow between the individuals, right? Remote work, even if you've got people in the same department, you are by nature siloed because you are physically in separate locations, right? So we work really, really hard on ways to break down that communication issue, right? We use group chats. We have I do like a weekly, and I haven't been very good about this lately, so let me just out myself there. But we do like a weekly update on like cool things that happened, right? And we also do a weekly update on stuff that's not going right. We try really hard to make sure that we're doing regular team meetings. We're putting face to face, right, together as much as we can virtually. 99% of our meetings are done video meetings, right? Like, I wanna see your face, and I don't care, like, if today you came to work looking like you're wearing sweatpants and your hair in a messy bun, right? I just want to have some face-to-face interaction. There's nothing better than being able to see another person's face, in order to communicate. So those things are challenges for sure. We also really utilize our tools, right? We've got project management software, and as a past project management leader, um, software like project management software, I am a total nerd. I have threatened so many times to build the ultimate project management software, right? Because they're all missing some piece of it, right? But project management software is key. Utilizing that, believing in it, trusting it, it is the truth, right? That's a huge thing to be able to work through. Is project management software is huge. And if you ask Scout, she, doesn't love project management software, but she admits once in a while that it does help her. But the reality is that all of these infrastructure things can be set up, right? You can work really hard to have better communication. You can require video on calls so that people have a better face-to-face interaction. You can ensure that you have team meetings. You can do all of the things that I've mentioned. But the reality is that you have to hire the right people, right? And the right people is not necessarily the same definition of the right people as even another agency that works in the same industry, right? Like, there may be another leader out there that if I hire someone and they're not a fit for me, they could very well be a fantastic fit for a different agency, right? But you have to find people that fit within your team's culture, that kind of get each other by nature, right? Like, we kind of all like, you gotta kinda get each other's jokes, and you gotta kinda understand where the other person's coming from, and you kinda come from the lifestyle, so you already have an appreciation for it, and you gotta kinda be a social person, especially when you're, like, a remote employee, right? Like, I need you to want to be social, but be okay being a loner.
Yeah.
Like, you kinda have to have this weird balance between the 2. Anyway, hiring the right people is the number one thing. And then from the leadership perspective, trying to find ways to realize that 90% of the way that you show up at work is what's happening at home. So if you got in a fight with your husband, or your kids are sick, or your car broke down, or there's bills to be paid, or whatever, right? So your favorite coffee pot broke, I don't know, right? If you've got stuff going wrong in your personal life, that's how you're going to show up at work. And when you show up at work that way, most of the way that you interact with other people, the rubs between employees are 90% what's happening at home. So if we as employers, as leaders, do not recognize that people don't actually know how to put things in boxes, right? Regardless of what they want to say that they're good at related to separating work life, right? It's all the same thing. So this whole like concept of work-life balance doesn't make any sense to me. Both should they should easily be able to flow into each other, and you should be able to enjoy both, and they will affect each other whether you want them to or not. And you have to find a way to make those two things work synergistically, right? So as a boss, as a leader, you have to be aware of things of like, you know, freaking Scout. I love Scout to death, right? But she moved into an office in town. This is a great example. She moved into an office in town and she's been avoiding buying an office chair. And she's got a company credit card, like, go buy an office chair, please, right? So she's been sitting in a dining room chair for several months for her own refusal to go buy this office chair. And so she was like, well, I really wanted this walking pad, and I figured if I have this dining room chair, then I'm more likely to use my walking pad, right? Because it's actually more comfortable to use a walking pad than it is to sit down. I was like, cool, except there's times you need to sit down, so I'm going to ship you an office chair. So like, it's things like little things like that, right? Or like one of our employees' family members got sick, and the person like with like terminal cancer sort of thing, right? Typically this employee's aunt would take care of this grandparent. And that aunt had a vacation planned out of the US and was going to be gone for several weeks, right? So that we, figured out a way, okay, how can we, number one, you're already remote anyway, go work remote somewhere else for a minute, right? That's fine. Number two, can we adjust the way that we are scheduling meetings and things like that so you can take them to, chemotherapy appointments or whatever the thing is, right? Um, the reality is so long as you're still getting the work done, for the most part, I don't really care when you got it done, right? Like you can really kind of work whenever you want to, with the caveat that I need you available to actually speak to you once in a while, right?
Yeah.
So, like, finding a balance between, like, how can you take care of those life things when you need to take care of those life things and feel good about going and taking care of those life things in a way that your job isn't, like, hammering you into a corner of feeling bad for doing it differently temporarily or being slightly unavailable or whatever the thing is, right? We don't One of the things here is that you cannot make a person feel bad for having a life, I guess, and that person is expected to then in return try to come to work as your best self, right? As
Yeah.
somebody who is thriving in life and you're coming to work as your best self. And so there's sort of there's a mutual respect between those two things. I'll give one more example and then I'll shut up and let you ask more questions. But um, one of the things that I learned from a boss that I think was one of the most insightful cultural things I've ever heard, and something that I have carried into our company with a death threat, is when somebody goes on vacation, right? Like if I'm going to be gone for a week, or whoever's going to be gone for a week, they are gone for a week. They don't exist. Pretend on Planet McFarland Productions that individual no longer exists, right? Because you should not, there's nearly no scenario where the world is ending enough at work that you have to call that person and interrupt their vacation. So that's rule number one related to vacations. Rule number two is when that person gets back on their first, second, third day from vacation, no one is going to call them and go, oh, it was terrible here without you. Everything's on fire. Everything's falling apart. I missed you so much. It's really a problem. Like, despite despite the person maybe thinking, hey, I'm going to make this person feel really important because we really miss them when we're gone. All you did was take all that rest, relaxation, rejuvenation, time off, and you made them feel bad for it, right? You made them feel bad for it, and you have instantly overwhelmed them. That's the opposite of what we want vacation to achieve, right? We want you to come back from vacation feeling ready to go again, right? Like, "Come let me at 'em" kinda attitude. And if a person does that to another person, I will give you one warning, and if I ever hear about it again, you are gone. You will not do that to another employee here at McFarland Productions. We will not. We absolutely will not make a person feel bad for leaving on vacation by either overwhelming them the second they walk in the door or shoving as much as you possibly can into them right before they leave, right? How much they get done, how much ambition, how much push, how much drive they have right before they leave is entirely their own push. And what I found as a leader is if you let them be their own push before vacation, all the memes that I'm seeing float around right now that it's like, "How dare you ask me for something right before Christmas?" That doesn't happen here. That doesn't happen here because everybody here has blind ambition, has absolute drive, has an "I'll show you" attitude to pull for their own team members, right? All of us here at McFarland Productions are pulling for each other, and if somebody's about to be gone for a week, they are themselves putting the pressure on themselves to get as much as they possibly can done before they leave to set their team up for success while they're gone, and then upon their return, they don't get put in a position where they have to feel bad about it.
Yeah.
So that like the vacation piece is such a big deal, right? Like, sure, it's vacation, but what you do before and after a person goes on vacation makes more difference than the actual vacation itself.
That is so good. I don't know if you've noticed, but I was taking so many notes around like, "Ooh, I could go down that rabbit hole, go down that rabbit hole." But from what I'm hearing you say that there's some key pillars here. Now, your company is a bit unique because you are fully remote compared to some of these other, corporate jobs where I've had managers come onto the podcast and they are in an office or they have like kind of like an HQ, but they've got the salespeople who are on the road and everybody else is at the office. And so every now and then they'll have like a
Mm,
sales team meeting once a quarter in person. But for the most part, they're out on the road, right? Except for a handful of other departments. And
mhm,
it sounds like some of these core pillars that I think could be applicable to any company, intentional hires, right? Like if you're
mhm,
hiring people who are not aligned with one, the company culture and the expectation in that role, the approach to the job, whether it's remote, whether it's hybrid, whether it's full-time office, if that's not aligned, burnout is gonna set in. There could be clashing
for
with
sure.
coworkers, resentment, shame, whatever it is. Like, the intentional hire piece is so, so important.
Yeah. Right people is almost more important than right skill. Right people is almost more important than right skill because I can almost always teach you the skill. But especially as a pre-veterinary medicine major, right? Like, I did not go to college for this. I know that I can teach you to do it. I don't know that I can teach you to be a good human. So I would rather you be the right person than have the right skill.
Yeah. Do you guys utilize, any personality assessments, tools like that?
We don't. We've kind of, like, played with them internally, like, as a ha funny, like, entertainment thing, and we've, like, done it as a team, like, we've honestly kinda used it as, like, just team bonding sort of stuff, like, we kinda poke fun at each other like, "Oh, yeah, that's definitely you," sort of thing, but to be honest with you, my interview process is not a list of questions. My interview process is mostly about you as a human. I want to understand you. I want to get to know you. I want to feel like you're the right fit for this team, and most of like, I am the most non-traditional interviewer on the planet. And I actually do it in our video interviews as well when we're doing it for work. So no, I don't ever have like a sheet of paper. I'm not like taking notes. I don't have like a list of questions I want to ask. I mean, I've got one in my head, but not like one that I'm like, okay, number one, number two, right? Um, so I think the biggest thing is like I wanna know you like a friend before I hire you. So that sometimes means that we take a little longer to hire, right? But I would rather know you and know you're gonna be a fit first.
Yeah, I think that's so good. I hear a lot of, some places are, here's the interview questions I have to go by because like HR gave this list to me and I have to ask these questions. And then you've got other places like
We don't
yourself
have
where it's just
HR
like,
for a reason.
yes, okay, that's the perk of being your own business here. I love that. I say that all the time. I'm like, I'm my own
Yeah, I
boss. I
mean,
I
I
approve.
I think
Like,
I feel like HR should do, like, the technicals of the job, right? Like, the HR should worry about things like tracking people's time off and making sure that payroll is correct and, requesting time off and all the things that are, like, transactional related to humans, right? But they need to, like, rename it, right? It needs to not be human resources because 'cause I've never met a human resource department or person that has had a human heart with a person that it works for them. Never met one. So allowing HR to be the one that directs how you do and don't interview an individual and how you do and don't hire an individual, I don't care what size company you are, that person better fit your team and better fit from a personality and a background and experience and a drive and an attitude perspective before they fit HR's 20 questions, right?
yeah,
Sure, take HR's 20 questions as a suggestion, but use them as a general guideline and then throw it in the special filing bin, right?
yeah,
Because you don't get to know a person by stats and statistics or statistics and all of that because HR like came up with this it's silly to me. Like HR to
yeah,
me needs to provide a function when it comes to the transactional pieces of being an employee of a company, and that's the end of their jurisdiction.
yeah. I feel like I need to get an HR person on here to
To
share
defend
like
themselves.
well, not to defend, but just to, like, understand, like, because their hands are tied, right? Like, there are legal things that they have to keep in check, like, I mean, I understand it, and I know some people who work in HR, and it's just like, legally, or, I remember one time I went to HR and because this was at the company I was struggling with, my very toxic manager, and, they're all always saying, like, "If you have a problem, come to us. Well, it's confidential, no repercussions." So I go and I'm telling them, "This boss of mine is wacko." It absolutely bit me in the butt. Absolutely bit me in the butt. It
Absolutely.
did not
Every time
say
I've
confidential
never heard
every time.
anyone
Yeah,
yeah, I've never heard anyone tell a story about going to HR with a problem like that and HR actually solving it for them. I'm telling you the word human needs to be removed from human resources. It's not human
it's just
resources, it's
resources.
like
Yeah,
employment resources. Employment
yeah,
resources, I'm good with you being like, make sure that we're legal, right? Make sure
yeah,
people are getting paid correctly, make sure
yeah,
bonuses are like, do all the legal stuff, keep me out of trouble, but stay out of the human part because unless
yeah,
like I really haven't met a human resource department that I have worked with or that I have heard anyone else that I know worked with at the corporate level, at the mid level, at the small level, as the individual level that has ever been happy with HR from a
yeah,
human perspective, right? The second the human runs into it, that's where their jurisdiction needs to end.
yeah. I have so many thoughts on that. But let's go back because I so hiring intentional, setting clear expectations, having clear communication,
Mhm.
having systems and processes in place, even though some of us loathe them, they help keep the
Give me
the
some
the
SOPs, man.
consistency. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to talk to you about labor real quick because in the ag industry specifically, and I know you're kind of like more of like the outdoor and production side of things as far as like film production, not plant production. So let's clarify that. But
Sure.
because I know a lot of people are in production ag that listen to this podcast and they're producing crops and livestock and things. So I wanted to make sure I clarified that. But
Sure.
labor seems to
Sure.
be a hot topic around like we just can't find people. But then at the same time, I get on LinkedIn and everybody's been laid off and everybody's searching for a job. And it's been 18 months since I've had a job. And it's like, I don't understand what's happening because I'm seeing half my feed saying they can't find any employees. And then the other half of my feed saying they can't find an employer. So, as a business owner, what are you finding? Do you have a problem finding labor? Do you have a problem keeping labor? Or do you just have the same labor and it's been steady and you're good, you haven't experienced it?
Well, I think I don't think hiring is easy by any means, right? Finding the right fit is not easy, and it does take time. But when we put an applicate or when we put a job listing out there, we get 100, 200, 300 applications quickly, like within a couple of weeks, at the very most. Like we get a ridiculous amount of applications. We narrow those down to the people that are, I don't want to say worth talking to because I think everyone's worth talking to, right? But um, that we feel like maybe could be a fit on paper, so maybe we should have a deeper conversation. We have a two-step interviewing process. So they go through typically Scout and then they go through me. And then we talk internally. And then if they're going to work like maybe they're going to work on like video post production, right? They would then talk to our post production editor, which is Ryan, right? And make sure that everybody kind of agrees, yeah, this person's a fit. Doesn't mean our whole team gets input on that, but the key individuals that will be working with them do. But kind of back to your question, um, I I hate to be brutal on people, but this is how I really feel. I think that our society has beat into like okay, back up. When I was in high school, the question was never what are you going to do after high school? It was where are you going to college after high school? Right? So it's a leading question. Like if I was going to go to college, but there are lots of people that maybe college wasn't the right option for them, right? Like maybe they wanted to go straight into production agriculture. Maybe they wanted to go to a technical school. Maybe they wanted to immediately go apprentice for their dad who's been an electrician for 45 years, right? Um, the question is leading, right? So our generation, especially my generation, especially was really led into the like, this is the path or you won't be successful sort of thing, right? I think that we're seeing a fallout of that now with people my age and younger, right? Who feel they've got a set of credentials, who feel that they should be paid at a certain level related to that, which they should if they're doing that job and it makes sense. But they aren't willing to do the crappy stuff first or in the interim in
Mm,
order to do what they consider crappy, right? In order to do the thing that they actually wanna do, right? Like, I've been kennel crew for veterinary clinics. Here at McFarland Productions, I've played every single role that I can think of. I'm the first one to take on overtime things. Like if we're behind on a project, I'm taking that over. I'm not going to force that upon my employees. I'm the one that comes over or that does all the contracting, right? Like I will take the hard stuff first. Give me the hard stuff first, and then I'll distribute it. So the people that are having a hard time finding the job, lower your expectations. Go do something hard for a little bit. Go do something that's not on your resume. In fact, I kind of want to see that somebody didn't have a 22-month gap in their employment history because they went and harvested for a summer for a wheat farm or whatever, right? I would rather see that like, hey, I rolled up my sleeves and did what I had to do something than somebody come to me and be like, yeah, I haven't had a job in 22 months. Okay, well, that's on you. Like, there's too many jobs out there. There's too many opportunities. You could start your own company. There's too many ways to make money in 2025, 2026 that if you're not working, that's on you. Like, that is totally on you. I have no sympathy for people who are not working. That is on them. I
yeah.
If I had to shut down McFarland Productions tomorrow because of some catastrophic thing, right? I'd be on to the next thing the next day. I'd either have another job or I'd be working on another business. Like I'm not going to just sit on my couch and like tippity tappity my keyboard and send out a bunch of applications. And if I don't like meet my minimums, I'm not going to do anything. No, I'm still going to go do something, make a move. Momentum is the number one thing that will allow you to succeed. If you allow momentum to stop, the whole thing stops. Everything stops. It's a billion times harder to get the stinking freight train rolling again from a complete stop than if you're at least kind of puttering along, right? Like fire on one cylinder at least, right?
Yes.
So for me, like people who don't have a job, like that's on you. That is not on the hiring like market, right? Like is it competitive right now? Absolutely. But that's because there's 10 billion of you who aren't willing to roll up your sleeves and do what you want to do. So all y'all can hate me for that from an employment perspective.
I am here for it.
Employers
I'm here for it.
employers, now sometimes you have to realize that you have to find good people, not the perfect skill set and experience,
Or
right? So
resume.
there a
Yeah.
lot of this responsibility is on employers too, right? Like, yeah, I don't need to know that, especially if I'm in like production agriculture, right? Like if you can drive a car, I can probably teach you to drive a combine, especially with all the GPS like auto steer tech. Like, let me just teach you how to run this stuff. If you can run the GPS for your car, I guarantee you I can teach you to drive one of these tractors, right? Are they going to be your best combine driver right out of the gate? No, probably not. But they could be a really good fit for your company. And as an employer, especially in production agriculture or anything that has like a seasonality about it. So construction is like this, production agriculture is like this, ranching is like this, event work is like this, right? Um, if you have anything with a seasonality in it, you have to give them a reason to come back, right? So you better have like honestly, if you have a seasonality to your hiring, you better have way better company culture than anywhere else. Anywhere else that a person can expect to work full time, they better love their job more working for you seasonally than you can possibly provide an environment in a full-time regular employment situation. Because it's really, really hard to start someone from square one every single year.
Yeah.
Right? So if you can create an army of people, if you can find a way to readjust the company culture, the business model, the way that you pay, whatever it is, if you can adjust all of that to sweeten the pot, right? For those seasonal workers, you need to do that, right? And you can't just treat them like grunt labor either, right? The reality is that harvest season is the paycheck for farms, right? And I'm picking on farms because this podcast is primarily those listeners, but this is true of any seasonal hire situation, right? Contractors should be doing this too. You have to find a way to make the seasonality okay, right? You have to find a way that it's worth it to come back to you and be off for several months of the year or find another thing to do for several months of the year that is good enough to make them to wanna come back, right? Firefighters do this, wildlife firefighters do this. There's people I know that, like, log half the year and firefight the other half of the year. Those are 2 very separate employments, but why do they do it? 1, they not all I'm not saying that logging companies have the world's best company culture because I don't think most of them do. I think most of them have a pretty terrible company culture, but they get to be outdoors doing the thing that they love, right? They love their job. And then the fire side, they make a bunch of money really fast, right? So these people will do this seasonality, this unpredictable seasonality that's dependent on so many other factors because they know that they are going to reap the reward of living in a seasonality type of way. We have to be thinking about that as seasonality. But even as like employers like myself, or, if you were I don't know, a feed mill or something like that, right? If you're hiring people that are going to be regular full time employees for you, you best make the company culture worth being there for because it's a lot harder to start a person from nothing and redo it every single year than it is to keep somebody. It's the same thing when you're selling to someone, right? It's way easier to work with a client you've worked with 50 times than it is to work with a brand new client, right? So we have to treat our employees, our hires, our individuals that are contracting for us or whatever it is, you have to treat them you have to treat them in a way that's gonna make them want to come back, right? So it's a twofold thing as far as the employment situation goes. Like, yeah, it's hard to find good employees, but maybe you wanna find good people first, and then treat
Um,
them like good people, and then keep those good people, and then the good people have to be willing to not to, like, maybe do what it takes and try something that maybe wasn't on your list, right? So it's to me, like, both sides have an issue there.
yeah, I think they're good people are out there, and I think I love that you didn't hold back because like the podcast says, like, we're talking about stuff that nobody else is talking about. Like, some people I think are too afraid to say it out loud because they might hurt somebody's feelings because we do have a pretty sensitive group of people these days. But then also, I don't wanna hear it, right? Like, some people are like, I don't wanna be told. I wanna
Yeah.
be the victim. I'm not ready to accept the accountability. I'm not ready to work hard. I don't want that. I wanna play the victim, and I wanna wallow, and they're not ready to hear a hard truth, and I don't know ho I mean, I think it's a lose-lose no matter which way you go about it, somebody's gonna be upset, but I think at the end of the day, if you want a higher quality of life, there are things you have to suck up, and there are things that you are gonna have to do in life that you don't enjoy, and I will say this, so the job that I was getting ready to leave slash got fired from, I was making pretty good money. We had a house in the subdivision and we had how old was Hudson at the time? He might have been a year old or something. And I was all of a
Mhm.
sudden jobless and I was the breadwinner at that point. And I was like, what are we gonna do? And I went from working for this very large company making very good money to one day my son and I were just trying to get out of the house and we went to Sky Zone to go is like a trampoline park and they had like a little toddler time jump thing and I was like let's just go. It'll be good for us to get out of the house. I was kind of going stir crazy and was that person that was applying to literally every job. And I was like, I am fried. I got to get out of here. So we go to Sky Zone. Hudson's jumping around as this cute little 1 year old self, just bouncing on the trampoline. And I got to talking with one of the employees. One of those employees just happened to be the owner of the place. And we got to talking, and I was telling her, I was like, this is what's going on. I'm kind of struggling. And, I'm fed up with this, and she ended up offering me a job, and I went from making really good money. I'm talking like, I think I was making 6 figures at the time to $14 an hour. I mean, I had the credentials,
But it's
college degree,
$14 more than sitting at
year
home.
yeah, years under my belt of working for a corporate, and then all of a sudden I was signing the line to be an employee for a $14 an hour job, and my pride I think I was probably 20, uh, was I 27 at the time? Like, so, I mean, close to 30, and here I am making $14 an hour, and I was like, "Oh, this sucks." And I was kind of mad, but that was my favorite job I've ever had. I had so much fun. I I remember learning new skills that I had never learned before because I went from working in sales to being a buyer to now I'm working in events at Sky Zone, a trampoline park, and I was helping coordinate like the little events that they have like for the community. And that was the funnest job I ever had. I
Mhm,
learned so much in the summer that I worked there because that
mhm.
fall I ended up getting a job offer to get back into the corporate world. But that summer, making $14 an hour was the highlight of my career. And had I don't know,
Yes.
not that
This is
I don't
yeah.
think you shouldn't stick it out sometimes. I think sometimes you do need to swallow your pride and just make money because we have bills to pay, right? Like sometimes you just gotta go get some money. Other times it does make sense to hold out and find the right thing. Like I see both sides, but for me in that season of my life, I needed to make some money, like, we had bills to pay. But that was the highlight of my
I
career, and
think
I'll never forget what I learned there.
yeah, you might have taken a pay cut, you might have, gone, perceivably way backwards, right? But the reality is an employer is gonna see that you did what you had to do. They're gonna see that you stayed employed. They're gonna see that you were able to get a new job almost immediately, right? You're hireable. That makes you like that means somebody met you almost immediately and thought this person's hireable, right? They hired you, you worked the summer, you had a great reference from that employer, and your last experience in a workplace was not a negative one, right? The one that you left before that was a negative one. And quite frankly, if I'm sitting in an interview with you and I say like, "Well, okay, what happened with, what made you leave your last position? What have you been doing for the last few months since then?" If all I'm hearing is, "Well, I really hated the position and I hate really had to get out of there and I ended up leaving and it wasn't on good terms and I've been really struggling to get hired and blah blah blah." I would rather you say like, "Hey, like yeah, I wasn't happy there. I left. I found an interim that I actually really loved. I've learned a lot. Here's some of the event stuff that I did. Here's some of the cool things that I learned. Here's some new skills that I got, even out of a job that perceivably seems like I went way backwards. You gained, like, without knowing anything else about that job. If we were in an interview, I would think to myself, okay, she gained people skills. She gained project management skills. She found the ability to be able to coordinate multiple types of employees, people, locations, and patrons coming to that. She gained the ability to better communicate with people, guaranteed, right? Events is something that you must communicate with a lot of people. And she found something to make it work, right? She did something, like do something. I would much rather see that than I've been applying for some jobs, right? Like,
Yeah.
not that applying for jobs is negative, but you can do it at the same time, right?
Mhm.
And you were probably better at applying for jobs working for someone else than you would have been at home, burnt out, upset, mad, irritated, stuck in the house, right? You were probably putting in better applications
Yeah.
because you are
I had
happier.
some hope, some sort of hope. I was lit back up in a way that I was not expecting, and I so appreciate you saying from the employer's standpoint, I would much rather see the resume look like this than like this because I was so ashamed of that. I mean, right now it doesn't matter because I'm self-employed and I don't have a desire to go back and work for somebody. I mean, it may happen, I don't know, but it's not on my radar. But if you would have asked me 4 years ago before I started my business, if I, was ashamed of sharing my resume, yeah, I fudged it for sure. I made it look like I worked, for that one company 4 months longer than I actually did because I was so scared to show that that summer I was not employed at the level of my career that I wanted to be perceived at. I did take a big pay cut. I worked out of the industry, first of all, which is like, once you leave ag, you can never come back,
Yeah.
right? Like, I worked outside of the industry. I worked for a trampoline park, not as, a big reputable company in the industry. I was so ashamed of it. So I fudged my resume and I just pretended it didn't happen. And not only, like you said, does it miss out on me sharing some of the skills I learned that would have been really important, I couldn't sleep at night knowing that I was lying. I mean, I had
Yeah.
a shame and a guilt, and I knew I wasn't telling the truth, and that wasn't authentic to me, and it didn't feel good. But at the time, I didn't know another way. And so, if there's somebody listening to this episode that is unemployed right now, or you're in between jobs because of a layoff or whatever, like that would be my encouragement to you: is don't lose hope. This isn't supposed to make you feel bad for being unemployed. That's not what my goal anyway. But
No.
I think that the
No,
takeaway here
definitely
is
not.
do what you can with what you have, and it may appear out of character, out of sync or alignment with the long term goal. But sometimes you have these little hiccups and they teach you so much. I mean, thank God I had that job because again, I made some connections.
Mhm.
I had an experience that I would have never gotten, and that will stick with me. I mean, that I utilize. Here's something fun. The skills I learned in that 4-month job at Sky Zone planning events with the community, I now, which that was back in 2017 or 18, I now today at the end of 2025 am using those same skills to plan the AgriMind Summit that I am hosting. That is my
Yes.
own event. Had I not done that 10 years ago, I don't know what event planning would look like in today's world with my job. You know what I mean? Like I just don't know. And so
Mhm.
it's so interesting that, 10 plus years ago, I learned something that I am now bringing, or I guess my math is way off. That doesn't add up. I don't know why I said 10 years. Anyway, don't fact check me. Um,
Whatever adds.
whatever, whatever that, however many years ago, I'm now utilizing those same skills in my own business, planning my own events. So
Yes.
even if it doesn't make sense at
I
the time, it it will pay
it
off in the
will.
long run.
Absolutely. Yeah, like you're saying, like, being unemployed is not something to be ashamed of. Not doing anything about it or not being willing to do what you have to do about it, that's something to be ashamed of. So,
Mhm.
like, do something, right? And it doesn't matter what it is. And like you're saying too, like, I am a culmination of every single position that I took, right? So I worked in vet med, I worked for pre-manufactured underground engineering water conveyance systems, and I worked in healthcare. None of those really are truly ag. The veterinary clinic is as close as they got, right? But and I have a degree in pre-veterinary medicine, right? All of those things that I've ever done, the project management especially, but all of those things that I've ever done, I have used every single skill to build my McFarland Productions, every single one.
Yeah.
From kennel crew, because in knowing how to treat your employees when they're quite literally cleaning up dog poop, right? From kennel crew all the way to lead project manager for a engineering company. Every single one of those, despite how unrelated, how crooked the path feels, every single one of those things absolutely makes McFarland Productions and me as a leader what they are today. There's no piece of that that I don't use. And even if it feels way out of where you're trying to go, it's probably not in some way, right? Like that
Mhm.
is a huge, huge thing to learn is that like none of it's unrelated. It's all translatable. Like I really believe that 99.99% of businesses all run exactly the same, right? They're effectively made up of the same parts. How you treat the employees and what you do, that's the difference between each company, no matter what industry you're in. I don't care what industry you're in. So if you can figure out how to do those two things better, right, you're going to be better than any other company out there. And if you figure out how to be a better employee in some of those areas, you're going to make any company that you work for better. So it doesn't really matter where you land in the interim. In fact, it's probably going to be beneficial to you in the long run in some way. So, like, from an employer's perspective, hire good people, period. Overqualified, underqualified, from a different industry, doesn't matter. If they're good people, willing to work and willing to roll up their sleeves and they've got to all figure it out about them, hire them,
Yeah.
right? If you are an employee, be that, right? No matter where you're applying. But the company culture, like, kinda back to your original questions, burnout, all of that. It's really about, like it's really about giving a shoot about your people, right? Like, just care about them. Like, I don't know, I'm probably gonna derail us again, but I always thought, like, man, it'd be nice to take my birthday off, you know? Like, it'd be cool. Like, maybe I'll use my PTO and just take my birthday off, you know? And I did that a few years working for other companies and things like that. But, like, it also kind of felt a little silly and immature, but at the same time, like, best birthday present to myself, right? Like, just take the day off and not go do normal life things, right?
Yeah.
It took me several years to come up with the idea at McFarland Productions, but eventually I was like, why don't we just do birthday day off? There's literally nothing legally stopping me from giving every single person on our staff a flexible day off. And we can make rules on what flexible looks like based on anything we want to, right? So why don't we just make a birthday day off? So everybody gets paid for their birthday. If your birthday is not during the week, then take Monday or Friday, right? And you get paid for a day off for your birthday. Like, who doesn't want their birthday off? You know? Now you
Yeah.
just have to convince your spouse to also take the birthday off, right? But and maybe have cooler employers. But like the point of that is like just do things that like if if you were your own employee, what would you want? Right? And then how can you make it make financial sense, number 1, but how can you make it make cultural sense to then do that?
Yeah.
So, like, you can there's there's actually very few rules on what you can and can't do as an employer, right? Like, okay, I could pay for every single person on our team to have a gym membership. Not a write-off, by the way, not something that you can write off. I've looked into that. I was like, it's health and fitness, not a write-off, right? So no, we don't do that here at McFarland Productions, but it's something that I would love to do in the future. And I've seen other companies do it where they offer a gym membership. Like, who doesn't need to be healthier to be better at life
Mm.
and at work?
I
Every
will
single person,
say
right?
I've worked for companies that have given their employees gym memberships, but here's what really bit us in the butt. HQ was in St. Louis. I am 5 hours away from St. Louis. All the gyms that were a part of the membership were in St. Louis. So if I visited St. Louis, I could go to the
Mm,
gym. But as a remote employee, that didn't benefit us. And that really ticked me off. I mean, there's so many benefits with childcare and um, discounts for places in the community. It's like that's if you work within St.
right,
Louis,
but
though,
that's
you know?
because that employer was choosing to partner with those other businesses, and they got that as at a significant discount, right?
Yeah,
So that employer was positioning themselves to get it cheaper, not not worry about providing the benefit for their employees first, right?
yeah,
They were like,
yeah,
"Yeah, let's do it if I can get it cheaper." What I'm saying is do a $50 stipend a month towards a gym
yes,
membership or whatever, right? And
yeah,
let them pick their gym. I don't care what gym it is. Maybe I make you prove you're using it 4 times a month or something, right?
yeah,
In order to get the stipend. But, like, you can make all of those rules, it doesn't matter. But what you can do is figure out, like, what is important to my employees? What can I provide to them that makes financial sense for the company? And how can I do it in a way that actually provides a benefit to everyone and achieves
mhm,
the thing that I'm trying to achieve, right? Which
yeah,
is provide an added benefit. I'm not saying it's all through benefits either, right? Like, being able like, being remote to me is sort of a benefit, right? Like,
yeah,
you can work from home and, like, change your laundry over during the day, like, that's pretty handy, right? Like, I do it
mhm,
too.
yeah,
Um, so, like, being able or, like, your dogs aren't home alone all the time, or your kids maybe don't have to go to daycare every day, or you're home when the bus gets home, right? And so you don't have to, like, send a mother or mother-in-law to, like, make sure the kids are good until you get home, right? Like, there's a lot of benefits to working remotely as well if you treat it still like the job, right? Like, you can't
mhm,
fall apart the second the kids come home unless you're
yeah,
gonna make up for it later, but,
yeah,
like, being remote is even a benefit. Like, you can do things like that. You can give even if you're, like, not typically a remote company, do, like, 1 day a week you can do remote or whatever, right? Like, some people,
mhm,
at least in our community, like, the schools are only Monday through Thursday. So, Fridays are really hard for them. So, if they could just work remote that 1 day, that would be a game changer for their life.
mhm.
Daycare is
Wow,
really expensive. Like, I don't have
it
kids,
really
but
is.
daycare is really expensive. And it's not because daycare makes any money, because trust me, I've looked into the business, or like we've done some projects surrounding the business of daycare, and daycare owners don't make any money. They're like lucky to break even. They're as break even as agriculture is. But like it's really expensive for a parent. Like, sometimes it rivals a mortgage payment on a home, for one kid for a month. So, like, if you could cut out 1 day's worth of daycare for your kid, that would be a huge difference for that person. Like,
Oh
that
gosh.
ends up being 5 days a month, and then ends up being 60 days a year, right? That's pretty I mean, that's 2 months worth of daycare
Yeah.
that they didn't pay for.
Yeah. I think
So,
that
like, if
that's
you
so
can do
good.
things like that.
There was a blueberry farm that I worked with years ago, when I was working for a different company, and they were talking about, labor incentives and how they had some issues with, like, motivating their labor and, um, how do we incentivize them? Because the turnover was increasing, right? Like
Really
they just
high.
couldn't hold the people. And so we were talking about different ways to incentivize them. And one of the things we were discussing is like everybody's motivated differently, right? Like you and I, for example, I have kids, you don't. And so what motivates me
Mhm.
may be more time off, right? Like the harder I work, if I work longer hours, then that, is flexible days in the future. Or I don't necessarily want the overtime pay. I want the overtime hours. So like comp pay, right? Like some places you get the actual physical money, other places you've earned time that then you can use later. For me, I would rather have the time. For you,
Right.
you may want the money, right? And so it's just like one, not
Mhm.
cookie cutting it. I don't even know how to say that. Making a cookie cutter plan for
It's a hard
everybody,
word.
right? Yeah, my brain is clearly not working today. But it's not cookie cutter. And if you have the ability to say, like, hey, this is what's going on. We're going to be needing to work more hours. And I want to incentivize you to work through those. If you can ask each person what they need, do that. I know sometimes you can't. Sometimes the hands are tied and you have to all kind of come up with uh, a consensus here. It may be everybody gets overtime pay or everybody gets comp hours, whatever. But if you have the ability to be flexible with each employee, ask them that because everybody's in a different season of life. Everybody has different needs. And I think that goes back to something we talked about earlier about this whole work life balance. It's work life harmony. Finding out like
Mhm.
the harmony, the alignment with the season that you're in and how all that works out. And so anyway, I think this is such a good conversation
Yeah.
and I think that it needs to be talked about more. I don't have all the answers. I think that there's so much we didn't get to talk about today, but I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast, for sharing your perspective and for giving us a little bit of glimpse into how you operate and run and manage your business. If somebody wants to connect with you, follow along with you, work with you, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure. Yeah. So McFarlandProductions.com. We're at McFarland Productions everywhere. Off Your Rocker Films is also an option, or I personally am on LinkedIn, just Natalie McFarland. But yeah, thank you for having me. I do feel like that this is such a giant topic. We could spend a lot of time talking about company culture, and it's a big one. You kind of got to pick and choose which pieces.
Yeah, and I think, our opinions are gonna vary. Like, my opinion about work-life balance or my opinion about, um, remote work is very different than it was a couple of years ago, and so I think we also have to take that with a grain of salt, depending on who's listening, is that you can disagree with everything that we've talked about today. That's totally fine because you have a different perspective, but it's just the fact of being aware of, like, seeing somebody where somebody else is coming from and having awareness, like, that's the key here, is at least being open to having the conversation, even if you don't agree with it, of just having the conversation and seeing where somebody else is coming from.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
So good. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Natalie, for coming on the AGRIMINDS podcast, and I will be sure to put all of your contact information into the show notes, and, that way, hopefully, people can connect with you and learn more about what you got going on.